And what else can the continent expect in 2000?
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Dozens dead and many seriously injured after crash tanker explodes in Nigeria. ANC kickstarts South Africa election season with pledges to transform the economy and fight corruption. 2 firefighters killed and multiple injured in Paris explosion. Welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. Let's take a look at other top stories making headlines. Egypt releases information on 2 German citizens detained in the country. The safe birth of a baby born to Ebola survivor hailed as a medical miracle. Let's start in Nigeria, where at least 12 people have died following a blast of an overturned oil tanker in Cross River State, southeast of the country. Some sources put the figure to as many as 60 dead. Police and witnesses say those killed were gathering leaking fuel from the vessel at the time of the blast. 22 others are said to be in hospital nursing serious burns. According to authorities, the blast was caused by an electrical generator that had been brought to the scene to help pump out the fuel for people's containers. Hundreds of people have died in similar ways in recent years in Nigeria. And to another explosion, this time in France. At least 2 firefighters have been killed as they were investigating a gas leak in central Paris. Witnesses say the blast at a bakery shattered nearby storefronts and rocked buildings hundreds of meters away. The government says the situation is under control, with more than 200 firefighters involved in the rescue operation. Elena Casas has the latest from Paris.
And we have seen search and rescue teams going into the building that was damaged, the site that is behind me down this road, in the last few minutes. So there may perhaps be reason for the fire service to think that there may be people who are still trapped in the site of that explosion, and they're sending teams in to go and see if that is the case. Gas explosions here in Paris aren't really all that infrequent. Normally 17 people were injured in one in 2016, for example, and really they're caused by the fact that these buildings are old. A lot of them are late 19th century. They haven't been very well maintained frequently, and as a result these gas leaks are fairly frequent. The casualty toll from this one could have been much worse if it wasn't for the fact that the fire service were already at the site when the explosion happened. They'd been called to deal with a fire that had been caused by that gas leak, and so they were already on site, and they had evacuated much of the people who live in the building before the explosion actually happened. So it could have been much more lethal than it in fact was. But as I was saying, at least 2 firefighters have been killed, and a number of people remain in a critical condition in hospital. So this is a very serious accident. We've seen the Interior Minister come to the site just an hour ago to talk about his deepest sympathy for the victims of those who were hurt and for their families.
And staying in Paris, thousands of Yellow Vest protesters have marched yet again in the streets of Paris in a 9th round of demonstrations. In an attempt to quell the unrest, French President Emmanuel Macron will launch a 3-month grand debate initiative on January the 15th. But a figure of Yellow Vests movement says the debate was a pointless initiative since Macron has already refused to back down on certain measures. The protest movement began over a fuel tax rise and has since expanded to a variety of issues. And South Africa's ruling African National Congress has unveiled its election manifesto with a pledge to boost the economy, create more jobs, and fight corruption. The party president, Cyril Ramaphosa, released details of the manifesto to thousands of supporters in the coastal city of Durban, marking the start of an election season. South Africans will be going to the polls in May. CGTN's Yolisa Njamela is in Durban and has this report.
They came in their numbers from across the country. Tens of thousands of ANC supporters gathered here to listen to the governing party's election manifesto, to hear what the ruling party has in store for the country for the next 5 years. The ANC, which has ruled here in South Africa since the end of apartheid 25 years ago, is expected to win the May election despite presiding over a sluggish economy over the past few years. It's also a party that is tormented by internal divisions, with a number of its leaders accused of being corrupt.
Even as we applaud the great progress that has been made, we must acknowledge that mistakes have been made in some areas where transformation has not moved forward.
Since taking over the reins as the ruling party's president, Ramaphosa has been on a drive to boost investment and tackle corruption.
At the center of our manifesto is really a plan to create many more jobs and ensure that all workers can earn a decent living. We have a plan to ensure that investment can improve. We have a plan to raise 1.3 trillion rand in new investments over the next 5 years. Working with all social partners, we will intensify our efforts to restore investor confidence in our country.
He implored South Africans to be part of the solutions.
Through our 2019 manifesto, the ANC is making a call on all South Africans, black and white, young and old, urban and rural. We're making a call that we should work together to grow South Africa, that we should work together to grow the opportunities available to our people. Let us grow the economy so that all may have decent.
He then turned on to international matters. Ramaphosa told the thousands of ANC supporters that at a time of growing nationalism, the governing party is determined to work with other progressive forces to ensure a just and fair world through multilateralism.
Our success as a country is linked to the progress of our neighbors and the rest of the African continent. As an integral member of the global community, it is in our interest to promote a global order that is fair, that is just, that is democratic, and based on rules that are acceptable to all nations. We will work with other progressive forces to bring about a more humane global order through multilateral institutions such as the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and global financial institutions.
The vote in May will be a test of whether Ramaphosa has been able to reverse a decline in support for the former liberation movement. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN, Moses Mabhida Stadium, Durban in South Africa.
Well, speaking of elections, Democratic Republic of Congo's presidential runner-up, Martin Fayulu, says he has filed a court challenge to challenge the election results, and he is asking for a recount. The Constitutional Court has 7 days to consider it. Fayulu has alleged a backroom deal between the declared winner, opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi, and President Joseph Kabila. Fayulu told reporters the court challenge includes election results forms posted outside Congo's polling stations. Fayulu's coalition asserts he won 61% of the vote. According to the Catholic Church, 40,000 election observers across the country. Now, Congo's Electoral Commission says he received 34% and Tshisekedi 38%.
Toutes les précautions d'usage et ils ont déposé les dossiers hier.
My lawyers took all the precautions of use and filed the fraud complaint papers yesterday at 15:30.
Récupération du récépissé.
Today there were formalities of getting the receipt so that I can be absolutely convinced the file has been received, numbered, and is in the possession of the Constitutional Court.
Donc, en possession.
Well, earlier, police dispersed his supporters who had gathered outside the Constitutional Court as Fayulu filed his complaint to challenge the result. Fayulu supporters have demonstrated in several cities since the results were announced. Well, Well, in Egypt, the two dual German-Egyptian nationals have been arrested in the country for weeks now. Cairo says the two were trying to join ISIL militants in the Sinai area. One of them has been
named Mahmoud Abdelaziz after being detained upon his arrival at Cairo International Airport. The police says they had information that the 24-year-old was trying to join ISIL, but as he hasn't committed any crime and has requested to drop his Egyptian nationality, Cairo decided to send him back to Germany. Another Egyptian-German dual national is under arrest. In Luxor city, south of Egypt, 19-years-old Assam Sabbagh had arrived with maps of North Sinai, an extremist group's stronghold. Egyptian police says that when interrogated, they discovered he adopts extremist Islamic ideologies. The Egyptian government says the legal procedures for his deportation has begun. He should soon leave Cairo to Germany. Criticism has fallen on Egypt from the German Foreign Ministry as very little information has been released from Egypt about the two possible ISIL recruits. Egypt has been holding a massive campaign to eradicate the sources of finances and recruitment for ISIL. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
This is Africa Live on CGTN. We have lots more news coming your way, including the safe birth of a baby born to Ebola survivor hailed as a medical miracle.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back to some remarkable developments from the Democratic Republic of Congo. A 5-day-old baby has stunned medical staff after she was born free of Ebola. Silvana, born on 6th of January and weighing 3.7 kg, tested negative for the virus in a case that has been described as a medical miracle. It is the first case in which both mother and baby have survived.
Baby Silvana was born at an Ebola treatment center in Beni. Her mother, 28-year-old Josephine Ekoli, is overwhelmed. She is an Ebola survivor.
You have to be careful. I had a good birth. I thank God for allowing me to have a safe birth. Now I recovered. I do not have any diseases and the baby was born healthy. I'm very grateful for the great work that the team is doing.
Ekoli was infected with the virus and admitted to the treatment center last December. Historically, there have been very low survival rates for pregnant women infected with Ebola and for their babies.
I knew that they were following some women who appeared to be survivors of Ebola who were still carrying a healthy pregnancy. This was something that was close to unheard of in the last epidemic, and so that was really something exciting to see a woman give birth to a child after it appears that she survived Ebola.
Babies born to mothers with Ebola are in most cases already infected with the virus. These infants almost always die.
We did a sample on the newborn. We took a sample from the woman who gave birth and we took a sample in the amniotic fluid, which made us fear a process of release of the virus. And after PCR lab testing, actually the result came back negative.
In this outbreak, however, there have been several survivors. Doctors will continue to monitor Silvana and her mother's health to ensure they both stay well and Ebola-free. Jane Keo, CGTN.
All right, Tunisia's economic situation is still the main cause behind social unrest. Years after the fall of the government of former Tunisian ruler Zine El Abidine Ben Ali, according to official statistics, the situation has not improved and thus resulting to the deepening of social crisis in the northern African state. CGTN's Adnan Shawashi reports.
8 years after the 2011 revolution in Tunisia, the economic and social situation has not improved. Over 10,000 social protests were recorded nationwide in 2018. Economists believe that successive governments failed to realize the main objective of the 2011 movement. In fact, job creation is the main weakness of the country's post-revolution economy. There are about 650,000 unemployed people, including at least 280,000 university graduates.
The 2 to 2.5% growth is not creating permanent jobs because growth is not the result of investment. Economic growth in Tunisia is related to export of some agricultural produce, tourism revival and the service sector. There are no concrete projects, no massive recruitment. Unemployment reached a peak of 15.4%.
The Economist also warns against a record trade deficit estimated at $6.42 billion, recorded at the end of 2018, up 132% over 2010, when it was less than $2.7 billion.
The National Institute of Statistics has revealed that the rise of the trade deficit is 22% compared to 2017, $5.4 billion and 51% compared to 2016, about $4.5 billion. The $6.42 billion deficit is a record that the state pays in foreign exchange and a very negative indicator.
The finance minister has evaluated the main economic indicators during the post-2011 period. He believes that the public sector waited. At least 140,000 people were recruited by ministries and state agencies in the past 8 years.
The public sector wage bill currently accounts for half of all state expenditure. We are working on structural reforms to trim down the size of the civil service. It is true that the situation is difficult. However, we have not noticed negative growth.
Tunisia's general labor union CGTN has played a growing role in the country's politics since 2011. The syndicate has backed thousands of strikes in the public and private sectors to claim higher pay. All post-revolution governments have tolerated the social movement, which is guaranteed by the constitution. However, analysts maintain that repeated and sometimes unjustified strikes have paralyzed the economy.
According to the Forum for Social and Economic Rights, more people will be taking to the streets in Tunisia in 2019 to denounce the difficult economic situation, the low purchasing power, and the poor living conditions for a majority of Tunisians in many regions, including the capital city Tunis. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
In Niger, several infrastructure building projects have been launched in the capital as a prelude to the 33rd African Union Summit. The forum this year is set to be hosted by the country in July. There are ongoing construction works as well as numerous road infrastructure projects, including some financed by China. China, a leading economic partner in Niger, has also contributed to this year's summit by providing material support, including escort motorcyclists. For the people of Niger, all these renovations in the capital will greatly contribute to the country's development. The continental meeting will also mark the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is meant to boost African economies.
There is a renovation work at Diori Hamani Airport, the construction of a presidential hotel. There is also the Mahatma Gandhi Conference Center. All these projects are being carried out as part of the upcoming African Union Summit.
With regard to the works, I am convinced that they will bring added value to the city because the workforce makes it possible to earn something. For promoters too, this is an added value. On the socio-economic level, such a summit will have a great impact, and it is certain that it will bring something to the promoters.
All this is very advantageous for us. Niger was not very well known, and it will be now because there are roads, hotels, and the city will be more beautiful.
All right, time now for a short break. We've got your sports news coming up. Here's a peek at what's ahead. Egyptian side Zamalek continues their handball dominance in Africa.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.